Dr. Erin Westgate from the University of Florida has a unique obsession. Unlike almost everyone in the entire world, she's actually been kind of excited during this global pandemic. At a time where both extroverts and introverts long to go back to human interaction. 99% Invisible, reported on May 5th, 2020, that Dr. Westgate has been using her time in isolation to study the scourge of the pandemic, boredom. Dr. Westgate's research into boredom started accidentally when she was studying how much people enjoy being left alone with their own thoughts. One experiment she ran shows that 1/4 of women and 2/3 of men would rather shot themselves rather than sit and think for 15 minutes straight. Now, Dr. Westgate sees the perfect opportunity to use her research and change the world. From riding a bus to taking an exam, boredom is integrated into our lives without many of us ever thinking about it. And as the August 21st, 2020 New York Times notes, COVID-19 is driving Americans bonkers, with reports of boredom and depression skyrocketing. Now, in the midst of a global pandemic, we have the perfect opportunity, and all the time, to research how boredom affects our lives. And that is exactly what we will be doing today. So first, let's do some essential research on boredom. Next, uncover Dr. Westgate's new theory, before finally, understanding how boredom can shape our future. Long before quarantining, boredom made us think in creative ways. And as the March 28th, 2020 Washington Times notes, John Eastwood, a psychologist at the Boredom Lab in York University, says that when we are bored, there are two key things going off in our mind. The first is what he would call a desire bind. That's when you're stuck between you desperately want to do something, but you don't want to do what's being offered. Second, when we're bored, we are itching to engage our minds. These are the two key things of what it means to feel bored. Because of this desire bind, daydreaming is a crucial part of boredom that can spark imagination. Well, if that's the case, then folks should happily be creating TikToks and scrolling through their Twitter feeds. But the opposite's actually true. A report from the CDC reported in August of 2020 that United States citizens have had an increase in mental health conditions, substance abuse, and suicidal thoughts. Anxiety symptoms were increased by 200%, while depression was risen by nearly 300%. So, boredom is bad for your health, right? Well, maybe. A report conducted by Sammy Perot, Washington State University professor in human development, explains that people experience boredom differently depending on how they react to a boring situation. Psychologist John Eastwood from the previously cited Washington Times explains that although it might seem like a great idea to binge watch Tiger King to relax, it's not a good way to treat your boredom. It'll only affect the feeling in the short run. In order to affect your boredom in the long run, you must be productive. Learning a new skill, doing the dishes, or even painting a picture. All of these are things that will teach your brain the importance of long-term value. It's like eating a carrot instead of an Oreo. Or 5. You know the carrot's better for you, but that Oreo's just too tasty. And just like your physical health, long-term planning can make a big difference in your mental health. Who knew a little delayed gratification go a long way? I let off talking about Dr. Westgate, so let's come back to her and see what she's been working on. In her groundbreaking article, published in the July 2019 Psychological Review, Dr. Westgate presented a new way of understanding boredom called the Mac model of boredom. Social scientists have long held the idea that boredom is caused by one of two things. Either people aren't being mentally engaged, or people don't deem the task as worthy of their time. Low mental health and low stimulation can cause boredom, but enjoyment is found when both of these are at a high value. Dr. Dr. Westgate puts these components into a spectrum instead of an either-or situation. In fact, Dr. Westgate's discovered a new area of research called overstimulation. Overstimulation occurs when demands are particularly high and resources are particularly low. For example, boredom can strike when a tired speech judge is trying to assess multiple video presentations. In this case, the speech judge is asked to provide quality feedback, but it's difficult when they're tired, up against a deadline, and not used to video presentations. By using the old method, we would conclude that one of these factors contributed to the judge's boredom. But by looking at Dr. Westgate's new model, we can conclude that all of these contributed to the judge's boredom. In a study published in the journal Cognition and Emotion in 2019, people were put in a room with a partially built Lego set, internet tablets, and puzzles. But they were instructed not to use any of the items. The group reported higher amounts of boredom compared to those who had nothing in their room at all. Knowing you can do something but can't can heighten the feelings of boredom. And that is exactly how people have been feeling during this pandemic. Being socially distant has only heightened our normal feelings of boredom and brought those feelings to the forefront of our mind. So now that boredom is right on our minds, what do? Let's take a look into the future and see what this all means. First, let's focus on the kids. Children are constantly complaining about being bored all the time. But according to Dr. Chris Ladish, a pediatric neuropsychologist at Mary Bridge Children's Hospital and Health Network, it's important for parents to teach their children how to recognize and navigate different areas of boredom. And there's been a lot of worry with academic decline as children have been distance learning. But unlike a structured school setting, being at home has taught children different ways of grappling onto their boredom. Years from now, when we're done with this pandemic, we might look back at this difficult time as the time where children leapt forward in mental agility. Second, the study of boredom can help us examine how the pandemic has affected children with ADHD. Maria Grazia Meligari, behavioral psychologist, conducted an experiment observing how the lockdowns have affected children with ADHD's boredom. Her experiment conducted two age groups, consisting of 7 to 8 and 9 to 10-year-olds, both of which had a worsening in boredom with low and moderate severity. An increase in boredom can lead to an increase in undermotivated, along with a decrease in well-being behavior. In order to fight the boredom, she presented the emotional coping strategies. It's also important to note that these strategies tend to work for the 9 to 10-year-olds, mainly because of their increase in cognition. Pandemic or no pandemic, this information is important to look at the next time someone with a disability has boredom. So today, we did some essential research on boredom. Next, uncover Dr. Westgate's new theory before finally understanding how boredom can shape our future. COVID-19 has not been pretty. We've learned a lot during this past year. And while isolation may have been rough, maybe this pandemic has taught us the importance of boredom.